Facebook. Okay, we are online right now. 2 more things to do, and we're ready to start. Okay, so we'll chant Jai Radhamanava. Oh, forget about my picture. There we go. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhan Ati Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhan Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhova Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhova Kunya Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvadacharya also Tada Satishi Shimad His Divine Grace Savaya Chaitanya Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Jai ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidvaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyam Kun Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Jai Vrindavan Jai Mathura Jai Jagannath Swami Jai Yamunamai Jai Srimad Vilasini Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Gaur. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravali Pachari Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Devi Chatarani. So Om Gana Timiranda Shakaranchana Shlakaya Chakshur Unmeditam Yena Tasmai Shigale Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, before we begin the Nectar devotion, we'll chant this very nice prayer written by Srinivasacharya. Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipano Sadharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarano Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nande Namataliko Vande Rupa Shanatano Raguyago Shri Jiva Gopalako. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, namely Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Dasa Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus, they are honored all over the 3 worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Shri Radha and Krishna. So, we're going to continue reading about the indirect rasas. Just a little introduction. There's direct rasas like the Shantaras, Dasharas, Sakyaras, Vatsalyaras, and Madhuryaras, or in plain English, peaceful ras, servitude ras, friendship ras, parental ras, and conjugal ras. There's 5 of those. And then there's 7 indirect rasas, like chivalry, the one we're going to read about today. And previously we read about humor. Okay? And these indirect rasas, the 7 of them, flavor the devotee's direct ras. Everyone has a direct ras or taste. Actually, the word for relationship is rati instead of ras. But anyway, a ras means the taste that one has for a particular relationship. So everybody has one of those particular types of taste that is most prominent in their lives. And these indirect rasas flavor the direct rasa, as well as the other direct rasas may flavor from time to time the direct rasa. So you have a different mixture. I mean, I'll give you an example of how let's talk about food. Okay, so you have, let's say, 2 types of food. You got broccoli and spinach, which is what I eat for dinner. Anyway, so let's say you have broccoli and spinach. And those of you in Fiji don't even know what broccoli is because you're all in Maya. So let's say you have broccoli and spinach. The broccoli is my favorite. Anyway, so let's say you have broccoli and spinach. They're like the direct rasas. And sometimes you mix them together. And the 2 direct rasas, you put some spinach on the broccoli, it flavors the direct rasa or direct taste of the broccoli. And then you put spices, which are like the indirect rasa. I'm just giving a metaphor here. Like the spices, which are like the indirect rasas, like turmeric, curcuma, or hot peppers, chili peppers, or black pepper, or all sorts of different cumin, asafoetida, different spices that flavor both of those. Anyway, so the spices are equivalent to the indirect rasas, and the vegetables themselves are considered to be equivalent in this particular metaphor to the direct rasas. Anyway, hopefully you understand that. So next time you have broccoli, you will think about the relationship you should have with Krishna. Okay, So let's go on. And now we're continuing our reading about chivalry, the indirect rasa of chivalry. And this section of the Nectar devotion is so nice because it tells stories, it gives examples of each and every one of those rasas or a combination of the rasas, and it's pretty sweet. I would say this is the sweetest part of the Nectar devotion. And of course, at this particular stage of our devotional service, or for most of you, don't try to apply these direct and indirect rasas to yourself unless you're actually thinking in the material world. And in this material world, you definitely have anger, you definitely have dread, you definitely, whoops, there goes my glasses. You definitely have chivalry and all those other things, but we are not interested in your chivalry, your anger, your dread, or your humor. Maybe your humor I'm interested in. We are interested in Krishna's dread, humor, and the devotees who are, when they're interacting with Krishna, experiencing these indirect rasas and the combination of them. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to talk about chivalry that is related to giving charity. Actually, in the Mahabharata, Karna, just a little side story for you all. Karna was very much renowned for giving charity. In fact, Karna, who was not really one of the good guys in the Mahabharata, took a vow that whenever he worshipped the sun god, which was during the Sanjas, Sanja means like the beginning of the day when the sun comes out, the sun going down at the end of the day or in the middle of the day. So whenever he worshipped the sun god, whoever approached him after his worship, he would give that person whatever he asked for. So that was used against him one time, at least one time, because Karna, although he was the son of the sun god, and he had some demoniac qualities, and he was fighting on behalf of the bad guys, Duryodhana and company. But Karna had one, let's say, asset that made him invulnerable. And what was that asset? That asset was like a breastplate that was part of his body and earrings. And so whenever anyone would fire an arrow at Karna, the arrow would just like bounce off. Even if it was a Brahmastra arrow, whatever type of arrow it was, it would just bounce off and Karna would just laugh. Now it's a problem because he was on the side of the bad guys. And he was Arjuna's sworn enemy. So how is Arjuna going to defeat him? How is Arjuna going to kill him? Wow. He had this impenetrable armor that was given to him by the sun god. So there was an interesting occurrence. Because there's the sun god, and there's also Indra. So Arjuna, who was the main competitor for Karna, was the son of Indra. And Indra wanted his son to win. So he thought the only way my son can win, the good guys can win, is if Karna doesn't have his armor anymore. So how are you going to get him to give up his armor and his earrings? So Indra had a very good plan. What he did is he decided to approach Karna right after Karna worshipped the sun god. So Karna was there, Om Suryaya Namaha, Om Suryaya Namaha. He was worshiping like that. Then Indra appears right after that and says, in the guise of a Brahmana. That's another thing. Indra didn't appear as Indra. He appeared in the guise of a Brahmana, and Karna especially gave charity to the Brahmanas. Kshatriyas never accepted charity. That was against their regulated practices. So Indra appears and he says, yes, I want charity. And Karna says, whatever you want, I will give you. And Indra says, I want your armor and your earrings. And Karna, very calmly, keeping his vow, took out a knife and he cut off his armor, impenetrable armor, and gave it to Indra along with his earrings. And therefore, later on, Karna was defeated by Arjuna in the battle, etc. Of course, that was another story where Krishna had to be very tricky. And the way Karna was defeated by Arjuna was quite interesting. I guess we should just tell this story. As long as we're talking about Danavira, which is actually another name for Karna. Danavira Karna. So, Karna was fighting Arjuna, but Karna had been cursed by his guru previously. His guru was Parshuram. Parshuram had cursed him because Karna had lied to his guru. He told his guru that he was a Brahmin, whereas that was a lie, either in the case that Karna thought he was a Shudra, or in the case that Karna was trying to act like a Kshatriya. It was a lie in any case. So Parshuram, and I'm not going to tell you how he discovered it, it's a whole story about that. He got very angry and he cursed Karna to die when two things happened. One thing was that he would be driving his chariot and the chariot wheel would get stuck in the mud and he wouldn't be able to get it out. And that's when he would die. Another curse was that at the time when he was supposed to die, his ultimate or penultimate battle, he would forget all of his mantras. All of his skill would just go kaput. English means gone. And so that's really what happened. His chariot wheel got stuck in the mud. And he forgot the Brahmastra weapons. And he was trying to free his chariot wheel. And Krishna said to Arjuna, what? Kill him, Arjuna. And Arjuna said, how can I kill him? This isn't fair. He's trying to free his chariot wheel. Who am I to violate these laws of chivalry? Now here again, we're talking about chivalry. And Krishna said, hey, buddy, remember what he said about your wife? He called her a prostitute. Remember everything he did, acting on behalf of Duryodhana, your cousin brother. And he got Arjuna all riled up, and Arjuna pulled out his bow and arrow and shot Karna and cut off his head. And that was the end of Karna. Of course, even though it was improper according to the Kshatriya or the martial rules, it was proper to defend Dharma. Sometimes one has to break the rules and even fight dirty to accomplish something that's more important, of a higher priority. We were talking about that in class this morning, how Prabhupada did so many things that, let's say, ostensibly were against certain rules. Like Prabhupada lived in a house with someone who kept meat in the refrigerator and used to take intoxication. That's against the rules. And even Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Thakura's spiritual master, used to roll cigarettes for the construction workers so they would work harder when they were building a temple. That's against the rules. So because there's a higher priority when accomplishing anything, and one who is advanced can understand what the higher priority is. If one is a neophyte, don't even try to guess what the higher priority is. Anyway, so let's get back to Danavira. Okay, sorry for this brief excursion into a Mahabharata story. Danavira chivalry in giving charity may be divided into two parts: munificence and renunciation. A person who can sacrifice everything for the satisfaction of Krishna is called munificent. When a person desires to make a sacrifice because of seeing Krishna, Krishna is called the impetus of the munificent activity. That's Vibhav again. When Krishna appeared as the son of Nanda Maharaj, in clear consciousness, Nanda Maharaj desired all auspiciousness for his son and thus began to give valuable cows in charity to all the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas were so satisfied by this charitable action that they were obliged to say that the charity of Nanda Maharaj had excelled the charity of such past kings as Maharaja Prithu and Riga. When a person knows the glories of the Lord completely and is prepared to sacrifice everything for the Lord, he is called Sampradhanaka, or one who gives everything in charity for the sake of Krishna. What does that mean? Everything in charity. It doesn't mean just money. No. It means Manasadeha Geha Yokishimora Bilam to your body, man at the shore. Everything, your plans, your body, your home, your family, of course your money too, your car, everything is yours, Krishna. My time is yours. To speak of my computer. So when Maharaj Yudhisthira went with Krishna, in the arena of the Rajasuya sacrifice, in his imagination, he began to anoint the body of Krishna with pulp of sandalwood. He decorated Krishna with a garland hanging down to his knees. He gave Krishna garments all embroidered with gold. He gave Krishna ornaments all bedecked with valuable jewels. And he gave Krishna many fully decorated elephants, chariots, and horses. He further wished to give Krishna in charity his kingdom, his family, and his personal self also. After so desiring, when there was nothing actually to give in charity, Maharaj Yudhisthira became very perturbed and anxious. Of course, that reminds me of this next story. Similarly, Maharaj Bali once told his priest, Shukravacharya, my dear sage, you are fully expert in knowledge of the Vedas, and as such you worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, by Vedic rituals. As far as this Brahmana dwarf, the incarnation of Vamanadeva, is concerned, if he is the Lord Vishnu, a simple Brahmin, or even my enemy, I've decided to give to him in charity all the land he has asked for. Maharaj Bali was so fortunate that the Lord extended before him his hand, which was reddish from touching the breast of the goddess of fortune, who was always smeared with red kumkum powder. In other words, although the personality of Godhead is so great that the goddess of fortune is always under his command for enjoyment, he still extended his hands to take charity from Maharaj Bali. So, of course, the Bali Maharaj story has a lot more details than that. Shukracharya, Bali Maharaj's spiritual master, warned Bali Maharaj that this little Brahman, that dwarf Brahman who had come to beg from Bali Maharaj, was God. He said, hey, that's God. Don't give him anything. And Bali Maharaj decided not to follow the order of his Guru Maharaj. He said, I made a promise. I have to give him whatever he wants. And so with the first step, this dwarf Brahman, Vamanadeva, put his foot over the whole world. And it's like that song, you got the whole world on your foot, under your foot. Anyway, so, and then in the second step, he covered the whole universe and kicked a hole in the universe. That was pretty bad. And then he said, for my third step, there's nowhere else to go. And Bali Maharaj eventually said, after he was arrested, you can put your foot on my head and I surrender to you. So that's called Atma Nivedana. Atma Nivedana means absolute surrender to Krishna. Everything. I give you my body, my home, everything. It's all yours, Krishna. And that's love. That's the meaning of love. Love is not that, hey, I get you to give me enjoyment. Habarabu. A person who wants to give everything in charity to Krishna, but does not want anything in return, is considered the real renouncer. Thus, a devotee will refuse to accept any kind of liberation, even if it is offered by the Lord. Real love of Krishna becomes manifested when Krishna becomes the recipient of charity and the devotee becomes the giver. That's really important. Krishna is the recipient of charity and the devotee becomes the giver. Because if a devotee gets liberation, that is at least a personal liberation. We talk about the different types of liberation. Remember that whole discussion? The Sayuja Mukti. Then there's no service to the Lord. There's nothing. The Lord gains nothing from it. The other types of liberation, Krishna gets something from it. Samipya, Sarsti, Sarupya. He gets something from it. What does he get from it? You get your association. So in the Hari Bhakti Sudhaya, there is another example forwarded by Maharaj Dhruva. He says, "My dear Lord, I have practiced austerities and penances because I was desiring to receive something from you. But in exchange, you have allowed me to see you who are never visible even to the great sages and saintly persons. I have been searching out some pieces of broken glass, but instead I have found the most valuable jewel. I am therefore fully satisfied, my Lord. I do not wish to ask anything more from your lordship." Of course, that's the famous story of Dhruva Maharaj. Mother sent him to the forest because Dhruva Maharaj couldn't sit on his father's lap because his father was married to the co-wife of his mother, and she would not let him do it. And so Dhruva Maharaj got very upset, saying, "I'm going to have a better kingdom even than Lord Brahma." And he was given instruction by Narada Muni to meditate and chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And he kept chanting it, and eventually he saw Vishnu, and when he saw Vishnu, he didn't want anything that he had asked for previously, because he became purified. A similar statement is to be found in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 15th chapter, verse 48. The four sages headed by Shanaka Muni addressed the Lord as follows. "Dear Supreme Personality of Godhead, your reputation is very attractive and free from all material contamination. Therefore, you are worthy of being glorified and are actually the reservoir of all places of pilgrimage. Auspicious persons who are fortunate enough to be engaged in glorifying your attributes and who actually know what your transcendental position is do not even care to accept liberation offered by you. Because they are so transcendently enriched, they do not care to accept even the post of Indra, the heavenly king. They know that the post of King of Heaven is also fearful, whereas for those who are engaged in glorifying your transcendental qualities, there is only joyfulness and freedom from all danger. As such, why should persons with this knowledge be attracted by a post in the heavenly kingdom?" One devotee has described his feelings about the charity exhibited by King Mayura Dwaja. "I am faltering even to speak about the activities of Maharaj Mayura Dwaja, to whom I offer my respectful obeisances. Mayura Dwaja was very intelligent, and he could understand why Krishna came to him once in the garb of a Brahmin. Krishna demanded from him half of his body to be sawed off by his wife and son. Oh my God. And King Mayura Dwaja agreed to this proposal. On account of his intense feelings of devotional service, King Mayura Dwaja was always thinking of Krishna, and when he understood that Krishna had come in the garb of a Brahmin, he did not hesitate to part with half of his body. This sacrifice of Maharaj Mayura Dwaja for Krishna's sake is unique in this world, and we should offer our all respectful obeisances to him. He had full knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the garb of a Brahmin, and he's known as the perfect Danavira or renouncer. Don't worry. He actually kept that half of the body, although he was willing to give that half of the body. Krishna was just testing. Krishna will not test you like that. Don't worry. Any person who is always ready to satisfy Krishna and is always dexterous in executing devotional service is called Dharmavira, or chivalrous in executing religious rituals. Only advanced devotees performing religious ritualistic performances can come to this stage of Dharmavira. Dharmaviras are produced after going through the authoritative scriptures, following moral principles, being faithful and tolerant, and controlling the senses. Persons who execute religious rituals for the satisfaction of Krishna are steady in devotional service, whereas persons who execute religious rituals without intending to please Krishna are only called pious. The best example of a Dharmavira is Maharaja Yudhishthira. A devotee once told Krishna, "My dear Krishna, O killer of all demons, Maharaj Yudhisthira, the eldest son of Maharaja Pandu, has performed all kinds of sacrifices just to please you. He has always invited the heavenly king Indra to take part in the yajna sacrifices. Because King Indra was thus absent so often from Sachi Devi, she had to pass much of her time pining over Indra's absence with her cheeks upon her hands. Whoops, let me skip ahead a little bit. The performance of different yajnas for the demigods is considered to be worship of the limbs of the Supreme Lord. The demigods are considered to be different parts of the universal body of the Lord, and therefore the ultimate purpose in worshiping them is to please the Lord by partially worshiping his different limbs. Maharaj Yudhisthira had no such material desire. He executed all sacrifices under the direction of Krishna, and not to take any personal advantage from them. He desired only to please Krishna and was therefore called the best of the devotees. He was always merged in the ocean of loving service. Okay. And that was chivalry. Let's talk about compassion and anger. Ooh, they appear to be opposed. When the ecstasy of devotional service produces some kind of lamentation in connection with Krishna, it is called devotional service and compassion. The impetuses, which is vibhava again, for this devotional service are Krishna's transcendental qualities, form, and activities. In this ecstasy of devotional service, there are sometimes symptoms like regret, heavy breathing, crying, falling on the ground, and beating upon one's chest. Sometimes symptoms like laziness, frustration, defamation, humility, anxiety, moroseness, eagerness, restlessness, madness, death, forgetfulness, disease, and illusion are also visible. These are the vyabhichari bhavas. When in the heart of a devotee there is an expectation of some mishap to Krishna, it is called devotional service in bereavement. Such bereavement is another symptom of this devotional service in compassion. So let me go back. Krishna is God, but the devotees in Vrindavan, they forget that Krishna is God. So when he does something that indicates to them that he is apparently taking a risk or risking his life, they become bereaved and compassionate for him. I'll give you an example. Once upon a time, there was this Kaliya serpent in the Yamuna, and Krishna jumped, and he was poisonous, and he was killing everybody who went into the Yamuna, including all the cows, all the trees on the banks of the Yamuna died, except for one tree, which had previously had the nectar dripped on it by Garuda. So anyway, so Krishna jumped in. Everyone was thinking, oh, now Krishna's finished, and they were feeling completely bereft even of their life heirs. Of course, Krishna defeated the Kaliya serpent, but in the meantime, they were definitely grieving or bereavement. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, 16th chapter, verse 10, there's a, whoops, I guess it's the story I just told. I forgot that this came right afterwards. Sorry about that. Following description. When Krishna was chastising the Kaliya Nag and the Yamuna, the big snake wrapped his coils all over Krishna's body. And upon seeing Krishna in the situation, all of his dear, coward friends became greatly disturbed. Out of bereavement, distress, and fear, they became bewildered and began to fall on the ground. Because the coward boys were under the illusion that Krishna could be in some mishap, their symptoms are not at all astonishing. They have dedicated their friendship, their possessions, their desires, and their very selves to Krishna. When Krishna entered the Yamuna river, which had become very poisonous from the presence of Kaliya, Mother Yashoda feared all kinds of mishaps, and she was breathing hotly. Tears from her eyes were soaking her clothes, and she was almost collapsing. Similarly, when the Shankasura demon was attacking Krishna's queens, one after another, Lord Baladev became more and more bluish. In the Hansaduta, the following incident is described. The gopis requested Hansaduta to search after the marks of Krishna's lotus feet and to accept them as Lord Brahma had accepted them on his helmet after he had stolen all Krishna's coward boys. Regretting his challenge to Krishna, Lord Brahma had bowed down before the Lord, and his helmet became marked with the footprints of Krishna. The gopis reminded Hansaduta that sometimes even the great sage Narada becomes very ecstatic by seeing these footprints, and sometimes great liberated sages also aspire to see them. You should therefore seek very enthusiastically to find the footprints of Krishna, they urged. This is another instance of devotional service and compassion. And actually, I just have to fix this one thing. Good, it's fixed. Actually, when I go to Vrindavan, I find Krishna's footprints. And what do when I find Krishna's footprints? I put my head on Krishna's footprints, and I take the dust from Krishna's footprints on my head. Because there are certain places in Braj where you can actually see Krishna's footprints and Radharani's footprints, and even there's footprints of Indra's elephant, Airavata. So many nice remnants of Krishna's pastimes. There's an instance when Sahadev, the younger brother of Nakula, who was also the brother of Yudhisthira, Bhima, and Arjuna, became greatly gladdened at seeing the effulgent glowing of Krishna's footprints. He had cried out, "Mother Madri, where are you now? Father Pandu, where are you now? I am very sorry that you are not here to see these footprints of Krishna." This is another instance of devotional service and compassion. In other words, compassion for his mother and his father. In devotional service, without strong attraction to the Lord, there may sometimes be smiling and other symptoms, but never the stress or lamentation that are symptoms of devotional service and compassion. The basic principle of this compassion is always ecstatic love. The apprehension of some mishap to Krishna or to his beloved queens, as exhibited by Baladev and Yudhisthira, has been explained above. This apprehension is due not exactly to their ignorance of the inconceivable potencies of Krishna, but to their intense love for him. This kind of apprehension of some mishap to Krishna, first of all, becomes manifested as an object of lamentation, but gradually it develops into such compassionate, loving ecstasy that it turns to another channel and gives transcendental pleasure. So here, Krishna is the object of the compassion of his devotees. And sometimes, although it's not described here, devotees are the object of compassion of Krishna. And sometimes non-devotees are the object of compassion of devotees or of Krishna. Compassion is very important. So anger, okay, this is very interesting. Everyone likes anger. That's why you all watch football games and things like that. Anger. I guess compassion was a little bit too peaceful for you. In ecstatic loving service to Krishna and anger, Krishna is always the object. In other words, you get angry at Krishna. So, in other words, if you get angry at one of your friends, it's not ecstatic loving service. It's horrible activities or horrible emotion. In Vidagdha Madhava, second act, verse 37, Lalita Gopi expressed her anger, which was caused by Krishna, when she addressed Srimati Radharani thus: "My dear friend, my inner desires have been polluted. Therefore, I shall go to the place of Yamaraj. But I am sorry to see that Krishna has still not given up his smiling over cheating you. I do not know how you could repose all your loving propensities upon this lusty young boy from the neighborhood of the cowards." It's really angry. So Krishna is the object of anger. After seeing Krishna, Jadati sometimes says, "Oh, you thief of young girls' properties! I can distinctly see the covering garment of my daughter-in-law in your person." Then she cried very loudly, addressing all the residents of Vrindavan to inform them that the son of King Nanda was setting fire to the household life of her daughter-in-law. So it's really nice. Anyway, similar ecstatic love for Krishna and anger was expressed by Rohini Devi when she heard the roaring sound of the two falling Arjuna trees to which Krishna had been tied. The whole neighborhood proceeded immediately toward the place where the accident had taken place, and Rohini Devi took the opportunity to rebuke Mother Yashoda. So here, Yashoda Maya is the object of anger, as follows. You may be very expert in giving lessons to your son by binding him with rope, but don't you look to see if your son is in a dangerous spot? The trees are falling on the ground, and he is simply loitering there. This expression of Rohini Devi's anger toward Yashoda is an example of ecstatic love and anger caused by Krishna. So Krishna is causing it. He's the stimulation for this. But Yashoda Maya is actually the object of that love. Once, while Krishna was in the pasturing ground with his cowherd boys, his friends requested him to go to the Talavana forest, where Gardavasura, a disturbing demon in the shape of an ass, resided. That's a donkey. The friends of Krishna wanted to eat the fruit from the forest trees, but they could not go because of the fear of the demon. Thus requested Krishna to go there and kill Gardavasura. After Krishna did this, they all returned home, and their report of the day's activity perturbed Mother Yashoda because Krishna had been sent alone into such danger in the Talavana forest. Thus she looked upon the boys with anger. Generally, you have Balaram killing this particular demon. Either this is a different occurrence of this, or still it could be because Krishna and Balaram went there together and killed all the other demons, and they were in danger, and Yashoda Maya was upset. There's another instance of anger on the part of a friend of Radharani's. When Radharani was dissatisfied with the behavior of Krishna and had stopped talking with him, Krishna was very sorry for Radharani's great dissatisfaction, and in order to beg forgiveness, he fell down at her lotus feet. But even after this, Radharani was not satisfied, and she did not talk with Krishna. Huffy and puffy. At that time, one of her friends chastised her in the following words. My dear friend, you are allowing yourself to be churned by the rod of dissatisfaction, so what can I say to you? The only advice I can give you is that you had better leave the scene immediately because your misbehavior is giving me too much pain. I cannot bear to see your behavior, because even though Krishna's peacock feather has touched your feet, you still appear to be red-faced, angry. The above attitudes of dissatisfaction and anger in devotional service are called irshu. Irshu, that's right. When Akrura was leaving Vrindavan, some of the elderly gopis rebuked him as follows. O son of Kandani, your cruelty is defaming the dynasty of King Yadu. You are taking Krishna away, keeping us in such a pitiable condition without him. Now, even before you have left, the life air of all the gopis has practically disappeared. That's anger towards Akrura. When Krishna was insulted by Shishupal in the assembly of the Rajasuya Yajna convened by Maharaja Yudhisthira, there was a great turmoil among the Pandavas and Kurus involving grandfather Bhishma. At that time, Nakula said with great anger, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and the nails of his toes are beautified by the light emanating from the jeweled helmets of the authorities of the Vedas. If he is derided by anyone, I declare herewith as a Pandava that I will kick his helmet with my left foot, and I will strike him with my arrows, which is good as the Yamadanda, the scepter of Yamaraj. This is an instance of ecstatic love for Krishna and anger. And of course, Krishna held them all back because the person who was blaspheming Krishna was Shishupal, Krishna's cousin, who had been blessed by Krishna previously. When Shishupal's mother understood that Krishna was going to be the cause of Shishupal's death, that Krishna would forgive 100 of his offenses before anything could happen. So this Shishupal kept offending Krishna, and Krishna was counting to 100, and when he got to 100, Shishupal literally lost his head because Krishna threw his Sudarshan chakra and cut off Shishupal's head. In such a transcendental angry mood, sometimes sarcastic remarks, unfavorable glances, and insulting words are exhibited. Sometimes there are other symptoms, like the rubbing of two hands, clacking of teeth, clamping of the lips, moving of the eyebrows, scratching of the arms, lowering of the head, rapid breathing, uttering of strong words, nodding of the head, yellowishness at the corners of the eyes, and trembling lips. Sometimes the eyes turn red and sometimes they fade. And there is sometimes chastisement and silence. All these symptoms of anger may be divided into two parts, constitutional and unconstitutional, or permanent and temporary symptoms. Sometimes great emotion, bewilderment, pride, frustration, illusion, impotence, jealousy, dexterity, negligence, and signs of hard labor are also manifestations of as unconstitutional symptoms. So constitutional means they're generally there, and unconstitutional means they're not generally there, but they can arise sometimes. Very easy to understand. In all these humors of ecstatic love, the feeling of anger is accepted as the steady factor. When Jarasandha angrily attacked the city of Mathura, he looked at Krishna with sarcastic glances. At that time, Baladev took up his plow weapon and gazed upon Jarasandha with colored eyes. There's a statement, this is such a nice one, in the Vidagdha Madhava, wherein Srimati Radharani, in an angry mood, addressed her mother, Purnamasi, after she had accused Radharani of going to Krishna. Actually, Radharani's mother is not Purnamasi, it's Kirtida, but Purnamasi is older lady who is Yogamaya. So my dear mother Radha declared, what can I say to you? Krishna is so cruel that he often attacks me. So it would be actually Kirtida. He often attacks me on the street. And if I want to cry out very loudly, this boy with a peacock feather on his head immediately covers my face so that I cannot cry. And if I want to go away from the scene because I'm afraid of him, he will immediately spread his arms to block my path. If I piteously fall down at his feet, then this enemy of the Madhu demon in angry mood bites my face. These are the loving exchanges between Radha and Krishna. Mother, just try to understand my situation and don't be unnecessarily angry with me. Instead, please tell me how I can save myself from these terrible attacks of Krishna. So it's just like making excuses because of the symptoms of love that were on the transcendental body of Krishna, of Radharani. Sometimes among contemporary personalities, there are signs of ecstasy and anger because of love for Krishna. An example of such anger was exhibited in a quarrel between Jatila and Mukara. Jatila was the mother-in-law of Radharani, and Mukara was her great-grandmother. Both of them were talking about Krishna's unnecessary harassment of Radharani when she was walking on the street. Jatila said, you cruel-faced Mukara. By hearing your words, my heart feels like it is burning in a fire. And Mukara replied, you sinful Jatila, by hearing your words, there's aching in my head. You cannot give any evidence that Krishna has attacked Radharani, the daughter of my granddaughter, Kirtida. Actually, it should be my granddaughter, daughter of my daughter. Anyway, some editing here that's required. Once, when Radharani was taking off the necklace given to her by Krishna, Jatila, her mother-in-law, told a friend, my dear friend, just see the beautiful necklace that Krishna has presented to Radharani. She is now holding it, but still she wants to tell us that she has no connection with Krishna. This girl's activities have disgraced our whole family. Natural jealousy of Krishna by persons like Shishupal cannot be accepted as ecstatic love and anger with Krishna. So Shishupal was not in ecstatic love. However, these other devotees, and especially Radharani, who were angry of Krishna, they weren't actually jealous of Krishna, they were angry of Krishna, with Krishna. they're actually pure devotees, and they're engaged in ecstatic love. Even Jatila and Kutila, the mother-in-law and sister-in-law, so-called mother-in-law, so-called sister-in-law of Krishna. I mean, if you hear about these loving exchanges, and then you'll never want to hear or read any love books. Like I remember sometimes young girls, they would like to read about all these stupid love stories. And it's just disgusting. I remember reading, I wasn't a young girl, but I remember reading Romeo and Juliet. There's no nectar to it. It's just like two gross individuals. But reading about Radha and Krishna, you never have a desire, you lose all desires to read about anybody else's activities. It's all boring compared to the activities of Radha and Krishna. So anyway, so now we'll take some questions. We will stop sharing. Well, we'll never stop sharing, but we'll stop sharing the screen. And then we'll give you all an opportunity to ask questions for the next few minutes. Okay, you can ask questions now. Who has questions? Oh, everybody's getting more shy. Oh, someone asked a question. Okay. I guess he wants me to keep this confidential, who's asking the question. The poor, whoops. So all right, here's a long question. So when an aspiring devotee, is blessed with some wonderful loving experience connected to the Guru and has no one to talk to except the Guru, then the Guru just humiliates that poor aspirant. What is he to do? The poor aspiring devotee just wanted to share his heart with the Guru since he has no one else to talk to about such things. Wait a second. It's a skipping on. But the Guru is so cruel. His behavior just gives the boy so much pain. The poor aspirant must feel dejected, pitiful, and alone. Is it wrong to get angry at the Guru for being so cruel? Yes, it's demoniac. I think it's very justified. I think Prabhupada will give the poor boy for getting angry at such a... No, he's just joking with me, actually. He's just joking. Anger is not supposed to be manifest towards the Guru. That is not a bona fide spiritual emotion or ras. One should understand the Guru is teaching something. When the Guru teases the disciple, one should be humble in this way. Anyway, he's just joking with me. So, all right. So, who else has a question or a point? Question? Nobody has a question. Oh my God, I guess I was so cruel with this poor disciple. They're even scared.
Gurudev, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. My question is, I can't remember, like it mentioned, there was conversation like when they're talking with Hansadutta, and I can't remember who exactly what that pastime is.
They're looking for Krishna's footprints.
Okay.
Hansadutta, actually, the interesting thing is that Hansadutta means a swan messenger.
Right.
And there's stories about that in the Puranas. And they were looking for Krishna's footprints. That was what we were reading about. Can't hear you now. You're on mute again. You're talking.
It's a swan messenger then that the gopis approach, and there's like whole pastimes and books about it.
Yeah, there's whole pastimes about the swan messenger in different Puranas. It's not really there in the Bhagavatam. And I believe also Rupa Goswami uses the swan messenger. I have to look that up. I'm not that familiar with those particular pastimes. Duta
Yeah, I
means
remember
like
hearing it, but I didn't remember where.
Duta means messenger, and Hangsa Duta means swan, like Paramahansa
Mm-hmm.
means topmost swan-like personality. So Hangsa Duta,
Okay, thank
like
you.
Hanuman is called Ramaduta.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Yeah, Ramaduta, because he's the messenger of Lord Ram, and he went to Lanka to give the message to Ravan to release Sita Devi. So it's called
Right.
Ramaduta Hanuman. Ramaduta Hanuman. So Duta means like messenger.
Okay.
So we should be Prabhupada Duta. Prabhupada Duta. That would be a nice name. Wow, that would be a great name to give a devotee. Prabhupada Duta. Messenger from Prabhupada. All right, so who else has a
Yeah.
question? Question, comment, problem, problem. Someone wants to be corrected. Oh, Praneshra.
Gurudev,
Yes, Praneshra.
yes. So my question is like in the time of Krishna, like the people is he offended a lot, but Krishna always tolerated for 100 times, and
Yeah,
then he given the punishment.
that's right.
So in this time also like the people is just like a blaspheme and do the offenses against Krishna, then how to tolerate them and how to
Well,
deal with them.
they didn't want to tolerate. The point is that they were all getting ready to kill Shishupal, but Krishna held them back. Krishna forbade them. So they weren't tolerant of that. I mean, they were ready. Steam was coming out of their ears. They were ready to kill Shishupal. But Krishna understood that had Shishupal been killed by anyone but him, it would have ruined the Rajasuya sacrifice. And that would have played right into the hands of Duryodhana and company. The inner story is that Duryodhana, who was also at the Rajasuya sacrifice, was also completely, let's say, riled up, angry, jealous, and all those negative terms, because he had been assigned the position during the Raja or before the Rajasuya sacrifice of collecting all the donations that were meant for Maharaj Yudhisthira. Krishna had been given the service. Interesting. This is from the Krishna book. Krishna had been given the service of washing everyone's feet when they came for the Rajasuya sacrifice. And so Duryodhana was collecting the donations, so he was getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And so he sort of pushed Shishupal to make more and more offenses against Krishna because he wanted Shishupal to be killed by Maharaj Yudhisthira or by the other Pandavas, and that would have actually nullified or negated the whole Rajasuya sacrifice. So that would have been a disaster. And so Krishna held them back. Normally, one should not tolerate offenses made to a Vaishnava. One should not tolerate those offenses, or one should go away if offenses are being made, or defeat the person. But in this particular case, the person who was being offended, the person who was being offended actually held back the people from defending him. So this was actually appropriate. So the people who were ready to defend Krishna or kill the offender did not have to suffer the reaction of hearing the offenses because Krishna personally held them back. All right,
Yes,
Ganeshra?
Gurudev.
Okay,
Yes,
that's good. But ordinarily, we should never hear offenses against the holy name, offenses
yes.
against Vaishnavas, offenses against Krishna, offenses against the deities. We should leave that place. Just like you have the story of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who was living at home very, very comfortably, and his family, they were all devotees. But Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's brother offended this great devotee of Lord Nityananda, Mina Caitanya Ramdas. And because of that, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami left his home when he was like 75 or 80 years old. Can you imagine that? I mean, most of us, I mean, I'm 70 something. And for me to just leave my home and go out into the forest, whew, and especially without any modern conveniences, to go out in the forest without a car, without a mobile phone, without a credit card, wow, that's pretty amazing. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami did that. He just left everything because of the great offenses that were being made. That's amazing, isn't it? So that indicates how seriously we should take offenses being made against Krishna's devotees. So serious. But the guru is entitled to chastise the disciple. That's not offensive. The disciple would say, Guru Maharaj, you are committing offenses at my lotus feet. And the disciple, how can the guru commit offenses? And that the guru doesn't commit offenses against the disciple. Prabhupada said the guru's business is to chastise the disciple. And he gave the example. Oh yeah, there was the story. The one time Prabhupada was in Vrindavan with his disciple Surabhi Adi Palyanta Maharaj, who had designed the whole Vrindavan temple. And everyone was praising Surabhi Maharaj, saying, wow, he's done a great job. Wow, he's done a great job. And Prabhupada said, yes, everyone's saying you're doing a great job, but my business as spiritual master is to chastise. Brings the disciple down to earth and also encourages the disciple for his devotion. So that's the business. And I can tell another story. I'm not going to tell another story about this. So who else has a question? We have time for another question. No? Everybody's so bashful tonight.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Somebody
Told me, I can't see you.
So, it seems so radical and like mean that Krishna would ask someone to cut someone's body in half.
Yeah, it's pretty radical. It's pretty radical.
Like when you read in the Old
Yeah, don't you
Testament.
remember that story? Don't you remember that story in the Bible too?
That's what I was just saying, how he had to offer his son and stuff. That's like pretty wild, you know.
But he never killed his son. It was just a test. You know, what a test.
I guess with the cutting in half, it's because they were Kshatriyas, and that was kind of like their mindset anyways, kind of radical stuff.
I don't know. I wasn't there.
It's just
But it
like,
yeah, it's kind of radical. I agree with you. It's radical. Krishna's a radical God, and he has the prerogative to do these radical things. I mean, there's all sorts of radical things, like Maharaj Ambarish fasting for something like 42 days. It's pretty radical. He's fasting for 42 days, and then Durvasa Muni comes and wants some food. And he breaks his fast, and then Durvasa Muni gets angry with him. Durvasa Muni is being chased all over the creation by the Sudarshan Chakra disc, which is threatening to cut him in half. So, I mean, it's really radical. What can you do? But Kali Yuga don't have to worry about radical things.
why is it in other yugas they're allowed to eat meat and drink? In Kali Yuga, when
Who's allowed to eat meat? Who's allowed to eat meat and drink? The Kshatriyas. because they're in the forest and they have to practice their hunting. They don't go to the supermarket to purchase meat.
Tell
And
stories about how brahmanas ate meat.
very rarely, only when there was some need. You know, if there was a drought or something like that. And Krishna conscious Vaishnava Brahmanas would not eat meat. So they would
Yeah,
not
because
eat meat. It's not Vaishnava Brahmins. Vaishnava Brahmins would not eat meat.
I just listening to the story in the Ramayana, you know, when some Brahmins, sages in the woods cook like for what's his name? Fashista, like some real tender meat.
Yeah, well, some of that, I'm not sure if that's bona fide or not.
Yeah.
But sometimes, if it, even a Brahmin, if he's in a situation where there's no vegetables, then he has to eat some lower creature. Like Prabhupada said, that if you're somewhere and there's no vegetables or fruits or anything like that, you can eat some lower creature like a fish or something like that. In certain circumstances, it's all right, but not for sense gratification, and never a cow. Don't worry. I will not eat meat. So don't worry about it. So any other questions that are like
Same.
pleasant? Any pleasant questions? Does anyone like to ask?
May I ask a follow-up question to the chastisement of the disciple by the guru?
Yeah, yeah,
So sometimes the guru may chastise the disciple in public, and a immature third party may take offense on behalf of the chastised disciple. And by
yes,
doing so, sometimes they may say something negative about the guru, and thereby
yes.
committing some
That's
offenses.
not good. I mean, yeah, like Prabhupada, he would chastise his disciples, and sometimes, yeah, even some other devotees would actually not agree with Prabhupada.
So is the disciple's duty to defend his spiritual master
Yes.
by telling them, look, I can fight my own battles and I'm not offended, so just chill out?
Yeah, Guru Maharaj is training me up to be humble. All right. Poor
Thank
Gopal.
you.
I never chastised him my whole life,
Not enough.
except for a few times.
Yeah, only during the day and only during the night, Gurudev.
Yes, not, what is it? Yeah, during the day and during the night, never during the twilight. Anyway, you're still here. You're still here. That's a testation to the fact that my guidance worked. Anyway, sometimes things are painful, like Prabhupada. I think he chastised Sasrup Maharaj practically more than anyone else.
Huh.
There's that, and also there's that famous story of the chastisement of Tamal Krishna Maharaj, when Tamal Krishna Maharaj lost the key, one of the keys. The Prabhupada had one key that opened up one thing, that had another key that opened up another thing, that opened up another thing, that opened another thing. Finally, you got to Prabhupada's Almira, which was like a cabinet. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he lost the key. And Prabhupada got so angry with him, he said to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, call the GBC. He wanted a special meeting in the GBC meeting because Tamal Krishna Maharaj had lost the key. Yeah, wait, can you imagine how you'd feel? You make one little mistake, losing the key, and there's a whole GBC meeting about you to decide what to do with you. And that's heavier than any chastisement I've ever given anyone. And finally, Tamal Krishna Maharaj found another key that opened it up. And he said, well, the lock was no good anyway. And Prabhupada just forgot about it. interesting story. Okay, so on this happy note about chastisement and whatever, we'll end this class and see you all tomorrow evening. All glories to His divine grace, Srila Prabhupada. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody who happens to live in America. We had a Thanksgiving feast today. No turkey, everything was vegetarian, and it was very nice, and all the devotees were pleased. And right now, there's an upsurge in the coronavirus all over the United States. It's just like exponentially increasing. And here in the state of North Carolina, one has to wear a mask all the time indoors if you're with someone who's not a family member, or else there's $1,000 fine if you're not wearing a mask indoors and you're with someone who is a family member, or not a family member, sorry. That's really heavy. So dangerous out there in the world. Okay, all glories to His divine grace, Srila Prabhupada.